jingle bells, we like reading books. And welcome to the 800s.
Cheers.
Welcome to the Christmas episode of the 800s, where we are having ourselves some milk and cookies.
Yeah, or Christmas beer and cookies.
All right. I am your usual co-host, Alex, and my fellow beautiful usual co-host, Adam, has joined us. And we are lucky to have our special third co-host, the one who fills in when we're sick and ailing, the man who makes it all happen twice now. Inside joke on that one. Alan, thanks for joining us. Yay! He's going to tell you all about what we're going to be doing for our Christmas episode.
Yeah, so for the holiday special, we're going to be talking about the books we read this year. We're going to be talking about just the top 3, our bottom 3, and then honorable mentions. I am super excited for this conversation because we've read some very interesting books this year, very different outside our wheelhouse books. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Let me throw some plugs at you real quick. If you want to know more about us, head over to dmstable.com. That's where you can find out all possible information about who we are and what we do. Also, if you'd like to reach out to us, we have 2 social media accounts on Twitter and Facebook. We're at the DMs Table and at DMs Table on those. And finally, Patreon is how we pay the bills. So check out Patreon and find DMs Table on there today. That's all.
And don't forget the Etsy page. Don't forget the Etsy page. If you are looking for some neat little stocking stuffers or Christmas gifts. Alan here makes some pretty cool stuff, so head on over there. Drop the link for him, Alan.
Yeah, it's dmstable.com/Etsy.
All right, perfect. Also, a quick reminder, this is a show geared towards adults. We do cover adult topics and use some adult language, so we try not to abuse it. Also, we are trying to create a fun and supportive community over at DM's Table where everybody can feel free to nerd out about all of any and all their interests without any fear of judgment or ridicule. So, in some, please be nice or fuck off.
So let the judgment and ridicule begin. Oh, wait, what?
I'm books.
We have banhammers aplenty.
Yeah. Gods of
They're
Jade
sitting-
and Shadow isn't in this year, so we're not personally attacking anything.
Oh,
Except
man.
for Gods of Jade and Shadow. Just
That's right. Holiday tradition
Oh,
now.
man.
All right.
10
Well,
years.
I mean,
from now.
I think
You guys remember
we'll
that
talk
one?
about it a bit more, but I think it speaks to the strength of the books that we've been reading that, like, we can only, like, pick out the one like that,
Mm-hmm.
unless somebody else has different in mind, but you will find out as we move along. So we're going to start off with our top 3 each. You guys want to do a round robin style, like 3 through 3, 2 to 2, 1 on 1?
Yeah. Yep. Oh, your least favorite to most favorite? Is that what you're
Yeah.
saying? Yeah.
Countdown to the most
Of the
favorite.
top 3.
I like that.
All right, why don't you go ahead and start us off, man with the plan, Alan.
Sure. My third favorite book this year was Off to Be the Wizard. I super enjoyed that book. I related to that book in very interesting ways, and I actually turned some of the characters in that book into D&D NPCs in my campaign at work, and I super enjoyed it. So, yeah, Off to Be the Wizard. One of my favorites this year.
Yeah,
I have
what
to
a
know which
refreshing and-
characters wound up NPCs.
Philip and Jimmy. Mainly Philip though. So we're running through Dungeon of the Mad Mage, and I made Hallister Blackcloak, basically like Jimmy, or not Jimmy, a character in later books, um, where he would heckle the party as they move through his dungeon, and I used a voice very similar to the voice of Philip, and talking style very similar to the voice of Philip. So yeah, super duper enjoyed that book. It had a lot of DM fuel in it, actually.
Yeah.
Really great.
All right, Adam, why don't you? Well, we can do this like one, two, three, and then I'll do two, and we'll go back the other way around. Sound good? So, Adam, why don't you
Okay.
go ahead and do your
My
third favorite?
my third favorite book was The Choice of Magic. Such a typical fantasy book, but is not afraid to pull the punches. Yeah, so one thing I like about the author for The Choice of Magic is his unique ability to just talk and have it be entertaining. I really enjoy Manning's style of writing and his ability to just kind of discuss things unendingly and keep the reader entertained. It's something that a lot of authors uh, aim to imitate, and I think he is one of the best. So, The
Masterclass for
Choice of
sure.
Magic.
Yeah, that I enjoyed that book as well. Um, yeah, it's interesting to hear that made it to your top.
Yeah.
I'm still working my way through that one, so it didn't feel fair to put it in there. At least in my top three. But um, if Adam is done with his number three, I'll go ahead with mine. Mine was also Off to Be the Wizard. Not one that I got to discuss because, unfortunately, our schedules got shifted over the summer, and my plans did not align with that of the show. So I'm excited to have a little bit of time to talk about it. It is, out of all these books, it was the only one where I felt compelled to, like, I have to read the next book immediately.
Yes.
Not like, because a lot of these I wanted to read the next book and it's on my list to do.
Mm-hmm.
This was one of those ones where it was such a fun read. It was gritty in certain places while also just being lighthearted and honestly in a time where I needed it to be. So that was kind of nice too. But there's a good voice behind the book, a good prose, and like there's some interesting topics, ones that I have mulled over. There's a lot of science fiction debates within fantasy, and the characters are generally pretty fun. I mean, it has some issues like any book, but I think it was one of my favorite reads, and like I said, it was the one I felt most compelled to like immediately read the next book of. I'm sad that there's 7 and I'm broke, but
Yeah, I think I blazed through the first 4 really fast. Like I felt the same compulsion.
Yeah, so like it just flows so smoothly, like one into another. None like I love Brandon Sanderson books, but like when you're done with one, you need a minute.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's a lot, and I never felt like I needed a break from these books.
Who suggested
It's very
that one?
they're as far as books can be bingeable. It's a very bingeable series
Yeah.
of books, and for that, if nothing else, and like it's, I have to put it as like my number 3. I also enjoyed Philip as a character, so it's cool to see he made it in there. And I think most of my issues are, at least in the first book, were with Martin being a bit of adult. But like I think most of it was me cringing at him because Martin reminds me so much of myself at like a much younger age, where I was just like, man, I was not that far off from this. And it is hard to watch happen, but that's actually honestly good writing, not bad. It's me cringing at myself, not like the character being that bad.
That was an Adam suggestion too.
Yeah, definitely.
Good
Yeah.
suggestion, man.
Yeah, solid suggestion there, Adam.
The thing I love about Off to Be the Wizard is your main character, Martin, is not like a hero. He's just a kid struggling through his story, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's very relatable and with some cool, thought-provoking topics, and some stuff follows some pretty typical stuff, but it's like it's a typical hero's journey, and it's done pretty well. All right, so I will start us off for second favorites.
Mm-hmm.
Number 2 for me, it was really hard to do this, for me, because my 1 and 2 are 2 of like my all-time favorites. So it was as soon as like I found out we were doing these, I had already earmarked them as like my favorites for the year, because it was going to take a monumental effort to move these 2 down out of my top 3, if not top 2. So my number 2 is American Gods. I tried to take the nostalgia factor out of it, because it's a book that I read when I went on a major trip, and I was on a very similar adventure to where I was literally like European style backpacking my way across America,
traveling with
I was like
Odin
traveling as I was
Yeah.
reading it, so I was like following my own journey as I was reading that book, and I tried to take that factor out, and the most I could do with it was drop it to number 2.
surviving against
But
all odds with gods around you. I get it. Yeah. No,
well,
I've
yeah,
been
so it
on
was a
those
very
trips
like Americana style book, and I was having an Americana style adventure, and on top
in
of that,
Europe.
it has a lot of thought provoking moments. It's got amazing prose, um, which made it very easy to read. It has more plot than some of the like. Usually, when books get that prose heavy, they lose plot, and I didn't feel like this one did. Some of the character development could have been a little bit better, but ultimately, I love the premise of gods get power from our belief, and those gods could be anything from anywhere. And one of the amazing things about America is that melding of cultures. And I'm a huge mythology geek, so having little bits and pieces of mythology from all over the world show up in there, and seeing how it manifests and how it changed, not based on any sort of like chosen version of these myths, but by the author, but chosen versions by the believers, which I thought was kind of a cool look into what faith could be if you view it in a certain way, and how powerful, in an exploration into the power of faith, while also the power of free will is explored through your main character. And yeah, I just really enjoyed it on all levels for the most part, and I'm only dropping it down to number 2 mostly just because there's some character development stuff that could have been done better, and I did handicap it a bit because of my nostalgia factor.
Assumed bias on there.
Yeah. There's still bias. It was number 2, and it was gonna. But anyways, Adam, why don't you go ahead and tell us your number 2?
Yeah, for me, Sufficiently Advanced Magic made it to number 2. You know me, I'm always loving a super magical fantasy story. That's my preferred method of literature. And Sufficiently Advanced Magic had it all. It had a very relatable main character, a super awesome magic system, and an incredible world building throughout the entire novel and the next and the next. It was just, in my opinion, a very well-rounded novel, and it checked all the boxes.
Nice. Let's
The nice sweater.
So my second favorite book is actually the same as Alex's, American Gods. So American Gods for me made the list because it was a and it sounds catty, I guess, or spiteful, but it showed me how Gods of Jade and Shadow went wrong, and it did, and for me, it showed me how close Gods and Jade and Shadow was from being one of my favorites last year, because it honestly, like, this book was so similar in ways, but the way Neil Gaiman wrote it just it took it to a different level, and it showed me that, like, that meandering plot and storytelling can be done very well and in a way that keeps me captivated. So yeah, it yeah, I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, if it's something's gonna meander storyline wise, I kind of had a similar thought at one point um, when rereading it, because I did read it again despite not being there for that episode. Um, is when something meanders a bit, the idea is that you have to come through the woods at some point.
Yeah.
And there needs to, at the very least, be some semblance of like a light at the end of the tunnel, or
And a payoff.
yeah, and a payoff that just never follows through. And the payoff in American Gods is honestly the character development of the gods themselves.
Yeah.
Like, they were, you either have to treat them as these forces of nature or and leave them as such. But as soon as you bring them down into these individual characters, you need to develop them. And Gods of Jade and Shadow never develops them when it brings them into focus beyond being just these like greater beings. Whereas American Gods, you fully explore several of them with enough depth to get, like, they feel like real characters, not just like placeholders for just generic conflict.
Exactly. Yeah, Neil did a good job of writing depth to a very large cast. He was efficient in his descriptions and summations of what makes each character in the cast important, and yeah, it was really well done. Does Adam want to go first for the top book?
Sure thing.
Okay.
I don't think it's
I'll
anybody.
go second, and then Alan, you'll round us out, or
yeah.
Right.
So obviously I gotta go with Brando Sandow for my favorite book.
Surprise!
I know it's shocking, right?
But which one?
Words of Radiance. To me, is my all-time favorite book.
Really?
Not just of this year, but of any year.
Wow.
I have not read a better book, in my opinion.
What made that book stand out so much to you?
Just the. So in part of it is meta because it's the second book in a series, but it doesn't feel like a second book in a series to me.
Sure.
Because you still get just as much world building in Words of Radiance as you do in The Way of Kings. The characters all go through amazing growth. The plot of the book is just super cool. Words of Radiance gives you a glimpse into Shallan's life that makes you go, maybe there is something to this character that just wasn't there in The Way of Kings. So yeah, I'd say the biggest factor of it is that character growth, followed closely by the fact that Brandon Sanderson managed to continue building a world that was already very well fleshed out in book one.
Yeah.
and it felt like just a massive amount of growth, even though it was book two.
Yeah, it's crazy because that book too, you're exactly right. You're like, how could this world get more in depth? And then it does, and then it keeps going.
Yeah.
It keeps getting more depthful without getting
It doesn't get
overwhelming.
repetitive at all.
Yeah.
While yeah, everything serves a purpose, which is his absolute strength.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
How about you, Alex?
My favorite book this year, and this is another one, like I said, it's one of my all-time favorites, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
All
Um,
right.
I uh, and this is probably part of what played into Off to See the Wizard being like my number three, but I really enjoy authors that can inject humor into their story and actually have a story. But like, I just love how absolutely weird Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is. It is offbeat. It has staying power. I mean, this is a book that's been around since the 70s. It is humor that is just so unique and is put in this really cool sci-fi realm that makes, like, at the time you really made you question a lot of the like tropes of sci-fi itself. And I like that it, like, he very specifically turns a lot of stuff on their heads and makes you feel stupid for making like general assumptions about like how a story's supposed to work, and makes you feel stupid but also makes you able to laugh at yourself and the book at the same time. The little snippets from the guide itself are absolute genius. Now I know this wasn't in this particular book, but like there are certain like the snippets that like stand out to me. Like I've always loved this book. There is a nostalgia factor to it, but like unlike American Gods, I think it just stands above that. Like like I can like honestly say it's one of my favorites all time without the nostalgia factor, and then the nostalgia factor just kind of adds to it a little bit. Um, but like I said, I just like how weird it is, but it's still good. It still has a plot. The characters make you question any preconceived notions and also yourself. And uh, I think it's one of the few books that I've read in the sci-fi category that I've actually laughed out, like physically laughed out loud, not just like a, but like actually laughed out loud reading. And like I went back and read it again, and I'm still laughing at the stuff. So it's rereadable, which is really nice. Like I was not disappointed rereading it, rereading it when we did this, and I was sad to miss that episode. But yeah, Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy is my numero uno for this year.
Nice. Mine is Sufficiently Advanced Magic. That
I knew it.
that book showed me a level of detail to a magic system that I thought uh, Brandon Sanderson had licked, and Andrew Rowe showed me that you can do it even better. I think I think and clearly Andrew writes to a very similar style that Brandon Sanderson writes to, and in some of his books, it's very Brandon Sanderson esque. He even states it in some of his descriptions. But what I enjoyed about Sufficiently Advanced Magic was the story was surprisingly refreshing. Um, it subverted my expectations completely. I thought starting the book out that it was going to be another like Harry Potter, and it didn't. It didn't turn into that. The characters had great flaws. Um, I didn't feel like there was any like really cringy tropes that I don't enjoy. Um, and it gave me a level of like wonder and inspiration when reading. Um, so yeah, I enjoyed that book a lot, and I hope people go out and read it because it deserves to be read.
Definitely. Plus, Roe expanded so much on his universe since Sufficiently Advanced Magic
Oh
with
yeah,
not only sequels but side stories and separate adventures. And
yeah, yep.
it's a pretty cool universe to jump into.
I think I would have to say that Andrew Rowe is the best writer you've never heard of. Like honest, that's such a hard category in realistic terms, right? Because like, if I've never heard of somebody, how could I compare them to somebody else? But I'd never heard of Andrew Rowe, and I don't think he has a massive following. He is not.
He's a hidden gem author for sure.
Bingo, yes. He is not the rock star like Brandon Sanderson, but he's out there writing books that compete directly. And in my opinion,
He's got
tops.
chops.
Yeah, yeah. In my opinion, it tops it. Words of Radiance didn't make it on my list. Elantris didn't make it on my list. Sufficiently Advanced Magic, though, it did. So yeah, and I think that's saying something. I think if you follow the show, you know that all three of us are pretty big Brando Sando fans. Much love and respect to Brandon. But yeah, Andrew's an up and comer for sure.
Mm-hmm. All
Shall
right.
we,
Well, that rounds up our top three each. Now we're gonna get a little dour here, but I think it would be a disservice if we didn't. But we're going to do our three least best books for the year. I can go ahead and start us off for my third. We'll be doing our third least favorite down and march our way down to our least favorite.
Excellent.
So my third least favorite for this year was Children of Blood and Bone. I thought it had a lot of really good initial elements, a lot of good setup, and it had a decent plot, but there was a lot of like lack of character follow through and potential. And I wish there were a little more world building in it to the mythology behind it. We got some, and it was fun, and I absolutely love learning about this like culture that we don't typically get to see a lot of, especially not myths, and getting to know about these cultures that for a very long period in human history were seen as advanced by most of the world. We got to look into it. That I found fascinating. I was left feeling like I wanted more. Like, so there wasn't
In a
anything like
bad way.
outright bad about it, but like I wanted more in that book.
Yeah.
And I didn't trust it. I was left not trusting the author to give it to me in the next book. Which kind of, there's enough little things that build up along the way, and if the author loses that trust, like if somebody handed me the next book in the series, I would absolutely read it in the hopes that those things would pay off. But it's not anything I would go out of my way to seek out for myself. Without unprompted, because there's so many other books to read, and I was really excited to read that one, and it felt like just a very mild letdown. Like, it wasn't a bad book, it just was, like, this was a rough year for Lowe's because nothing, at least to me, was outright terrible. So we're being I at the very least am being pretty nitpicky. And with that, I'm going to switch over to the naughty.
The naughty list.
All right. So who wants to go next?
I can go next. My third from the bottom is Zombie Fallout. A lot of this is genre bias. I respected the shit out of that book. It is probably the best zombie story I've experienced. And the writing was engaging, but that book was not my jam. It wasn't. It just wasn't. To me, it wasn't enough for me to say I want to read the next book. It's not enough for me to like recommend to people unless I know that somebody really enjoys zombies and is looking for a zombie book. Then it might come up as like, hey, have you ever heard of Zombie Fallout? If not, you might enjoy it. Otherwise, it just felt really niche, and I'm off niche for this. I was not the target demographic, so.
Fair
I
enough.
feel like that's a fair assessment.
Yeah.
For me, the number 3 slot took the longest to fill. There were a lot of what I would call middle ground books for me this year, and I felt like spot 1 and 2 for least best I could fill easily, but 3 was a tough spot to decide on, and I feel like I have to include that little tidbit before I tell you what it is, so that you guys don't murder me outright or just cut my connection or something. But number 3 for me was American Gods.
What?
I kind of figured. I kind of figured it's a little too close to one of the ones that you said you didn't like that had. Yeah, I figured this would. This had a chance of winding up on your list. But go ahead and let's let him explain why, though.
Faux surprise.
Yeah.
For sure. Go for it.
So, I feel like at the end of American Gods, I enjoyed the book, and that it was a good book. But for me, that beginning 3/4, I just wasn't invested and felt like there was nothing there to pull me in.
That's fair.
There was way too many characters, and I felt like every time they came in, they were just going to be marching out the door in a second, and I shouldn't invest my time in them.
Slow and meandering plot. Yeah. I can totally respect that, and I can see where you're coming from.
I mean, it's super prose heavy, and we've established that for you, Adam, you need plot for a story to be worthwhile, and it's not it has plot, but it is not a plot heavy book. And if that's something that you need in your stories, like, yeah, but based on that alone, I was expecting this to like shocked Pikachu over here.
I'm still on the stream, so that's a good sign.
That's right. That's right. Well, we can respect that you've got poor taste. I mean, that's fine.
Wow.
No.
All right. Well, so if you're gonna shit on one of our favorites, why don't you go ahead and start us off with the second worst?
Yeah, go for it.
All right. For me, number 2 was Practical Magic.
What? All right.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally, that's the exact one
sure.
I was thinking of when I was like, it was really close to American Gods, only with less plot. And that's...
Yeah. It wasn't a bad story by any means. I felt engaged through it, but there was no story there. It was just about the life of these 2 girls, and with a little sprinkle of magic on the side. I just felt like it was something you talk about in small talk and not something you write down and sell in a book.
It
didn't hit home with me.
I have a really good guess on what your least favorite book is. We've got a trend here, and there's like one more book that we read this year that was in that trend.
Yep.
Well, you'll find out in a bit.
All right, then. Why don't we do it the same way we did last time and go back through the order? So, Alan, that puts you at number 2.
Children of Blood and Bone.
Yeah.
Yeah. To like expand on what Alex was saying. This book was a big setup book with no pulling the trigger. Um, it felt rushed. I respect the hell out of the story the author was trying to tell. I don't remember how experienced this author was, but I felt like this author had a lot of chops with low experience, and really just wasn't able to like make the story as punchy as it could have been. Um, yeah, to some degree, I wonder if it was rushed. Um, I would have liked to read the book that wasn't rushed or had a little more time with the polish because that was a great like world. I enjoyed the lore that was coming out of it. I enjoyed reading about things that aren't in my traditional culture, that I don't really have a lot of exposure to, and so that was very cool. Um, but it was lacking in a bad way, and it wasn't my jam.
Yeah, yeah, feel you on that one. All right, so I guess I'll round out our second least favorites. My second least favorite was the Lost Apothecary. It wasn't bad by any means, but it was where I have to compare it to Children of Blood and Bone because I need to make my distinction on like why I like Children of Blood and Bone better. Is there were enough highs in Children of Blood and Bone to like teeter it up just a little bit. It just and Lost Apothecary was a good kind of like slightly above average book the whole way, but there was nothing that was just like made me urgently want to read this.
Sure.
Where there was nothing I was like super compelled to want to read. I was kind of just along for the ride a bit. It wasn't bad. It's pretty decently written. Like there's not any like significant plot holes that I could figure out. It just like if there were a sequel, it's another one where I wouldn't be compelled to like read the next one because like the history bits that were shown were like started off interesting but wound up being pretty predictable and um the reveals weren't all that big honestly for me.
That's fair.
So like they were there and there wasn't like anything bad about it. It just was it was a fine book, and unfortunately, this was a strong showing of books this year. And fine lands you at like, I basically what made Children of Blood and Bone better is it had more potential than this one did to like go on and be something better if there were like a second book. Lost Apothecary feels like very much a novel and a fine novel at that, but just fine.
That's fair.
Fair.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So Alan went second last time, so Adam, why don't you go second this time around?
Does that mean
Second,
I go
Adam.
first?
Yeah. No, Adam, you go next. Then Alan will round it out. I'm sorry.
That was a way to say it.
I'll go first for my least favorite. Is that what you're saying?
Oh no, for the second least favorite.
I've already gone for second least favorite.
We already did that.
Oh, hey, I am dumb. Oh, I may or may not have had a couple of these dragon notes before we started, and it's starting to feel like I had them.
Holy cow!
Somebody else figure out the fucking order.
I'll take it. I'll go.
All right.
All right. My least favorite book this year was The Odyssey. I felt like that story is the great granddad of many stories in our time, but it doesn't hold water in my point of view. I felt like this in my previous readings. I have a really hard time getting through the poetic cadence. The the storytelling is not as interesting as modern stories, and uh, yeah, it just, out of all the books we read this year, this one just couldn't stand up, in my opinion.
All right, fair assessment. I mean, classic classic storytelling is just that. Like, this is something that was oral tradition that, it is, the like you said, the great granddad of like all storytelling, at least for a lot of like Western heroes' journeys and stuff. And you know, when you look at the first draft of stuff, it didn't really look as good as the
Exactly.
stuff that's been honed over the years. So that's, totally fair assessment in my opinion. But
What about
all
you?
right.
Go ahead, Alex. What's your
My least favorite this year um was Zombie Fallout. Uh, didn't like the ending at all. Like, it was the only book that we had that I actively disliked something about, like, the book.
you
And I
table
just
flip?
actively disliked the ending. And I know there's more books, there's like 20 of them. And again, the other thing is, it is still so hard for me to separate that, like, the suspend disbelief of how a virus would spread after COVID. Like, if I had read this before COVID, I mean, it still might be near the bottom for me, but it might not be the number one. But like, the virus spreading the way it did, and the way the book kind of nonchalantly treats it, like, oh well, science fucked it up, and people, again, suspending disbelief that people would, flock to, like, 99% of people would flock to the vaccine, and everybody would take it. Like, bullshit. We know it's not true. um, but
but
like,
but
again, that's more me nitpicking, and I tried to put that aside. But the biggest thing I couldn't get over was, I did not like the end of it. It felt kind of cop outy to me, and I also wasn't the biggest fan of, like, most of the humor. I didn't mind, like, the voice of the person, but like, it all, and the main character's hard to root for, especially in the beginning, because he starts off as just like a dick and doesn't really improve that much through the story. The only thing that like, it does have a decent plot. I mean, it's pretty typical for zombies, like nothing out of the ordinary except for the intelligence aspect. That was like the main redeeming factor of, like, the smart zombies, and whatever that fucking demon woman was. Like, I have my theories that she's not actually a zombie, and she's like some harbinger of the end times, like a horseman of the apocalypse type of thing. But uh yeah, I mean, it was a little too prototypical in the parts that it did well. Like, there wasn't anything that stood out aside from that one little bit, but it's outweighed for me by the end. Just didn't like it.
that's fair. Yeah, I think that's something that, like, you certainly should and can pull into your assessment too, is like, this book kind of aged like milk against a actual pandemic,
Yeah.
you know? Like, and that was something that, like, I had to put off, like, and it aged like milk because we've been through it now, and there is that suspension of disbelief that, like, like you were saying, like the flocking to things, but also, like, it became very, like, cringy and edgy for someone to be like, science rushed a vaccine,
Yeah.
and and that was, slash is a major
Issue.
hot button, topic that we're not going to cover on the show, but like it still affects your bias and opinion towards the
Yeah.
book. So I mean,
Yeah, I don't put that on anybody else. It is
Yeah.
just on me for like disliking the way science was treated, kind of haphazardly, and that's typically not how it goes. And then like having been through a pandemic, like I just couldn't fully separate that. So yeah, that's my worst for this year, or my least best for this year. Because again, it wasn't like an outright bad book. Like nothing we read, I think, in this year was like outright bad. In fact, for certain people, I would still recommend this. Like anybody who's really big into the zombie genre, I think there's that little tidbit about like there's a uniqueness that it can bring that makes it readable for the right people. But
yeah, I respect the shit out of the Canadian incident, though.
That
was great. It was great. It's so good.
I'll give you that. Like there are elements that are good, which is like why I don't write it off in the same way that I did Gods of Jade and Shadow. Like I would still recommend it to the right people. I just wouldn't do it for most, which that's why it lands at the bottom for me.
Yep.
Adam, why don't you round us off with the least best for you?
Yeah, sure thing. My least best book was Always Have, Always Will. I take it that's the one Alan was thinking was going to be on there.
It was the other one I was thinking of too.
I saw a theme in your dislikes.
For me, the writing was good in Always Have, Always Will, but the story was lacking, and the desire to, or the relatability, I'd say, of the characters wasn't there for me, and the magic system just wasn't quite fleshed out. So,
that's fair.
It's one of the things that I've noticed in like a lot of like romance types of stuff. It's funny enough, I think Dan Harmon talks a bit about how like he doesn't even view romance as a genre. Romance is flavor for other genres, but he doesn't like romance as a genre of its own. It's like, no, you have a sci-fi story that has a romantic element or something like that.
Yeah.
And when romance, because he believes that when romance is treated as the main plot point, unless you deeply involve yourself in one or both of like the leads, you aren't going to enjoy the story. And I think he's a lot in the way that you are, Adam, where like he needs plot or he needs plot or direct subversion of plot for him to enjoy a story. Like I know he's a big believer in the hero's journey. Like he has his specific wheel that he goes through and make sure like everything that he writes goes through it. And romance tends to subvert a lot of that because it doesn't, resolution of the romance itself is the conclusion of the book usually. It doesn't need to be resolution of a plot, it's resolution of the romance. And if that's not something you're into, it's not going to be, like your kind of book. And I think you had a similar issue with Snowflower and the Secret Fan last year too.
Well, yes and no. Similar reasons, but not the exact same reasons.
Yeah, I mean, not exact, but there's a little bit of a parallel there. That's the one that I looked to when I thought this one would be on your bottom 3 list.
I think that guy has a point about. In my opinion, romance should be like a subplot in a book, but I also think he's wrong, just because romance is the #1 selling genre.
I mean,
I don't know, man. Like I think hot take wise, Dan's onto something because I mean,
well, it's definitely a hot take.
Yeah, romance is the prolific plot device, but like the genre, I don't know, like a lot of romance that I've seen is like historical fiction with a massive romance aspect, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well,
Anyways,
I mean, it
big
gets you
digressions.
in a lot of them. It gets you. The romance itself gets used to kind of like. I think we talked about this when we were reading it. Is like you said, we enjoyed the writing style, but there's like I think all of us were frustrated by the misunderstandings because people won't just fucking talk to each other because the romantic tension
Yeah.
needs to remain throughout, otherwise it's not a romance novel. And like I don't necessarily agree with Dan Harmon, but like I know that like there are plenty of people out there who agree with him about romance shouldn't be its own thing. I think it can be, but I think there needs to be if it's going to if romance as a genre is going to compete with other genres, there needs to be a reimagining of the formula behind it and using the miscommunication trope is not going to do it any favors for broad spectrum appeal, but if it works for the people for your target demo, doesn't matter.
Right.
Is the question.
Right.
I think
I mean,
that's
we all
the
said
point I
when we
was
read
trying to
that
make
book,
there.
like we were not the target demo for this.
Yeah. What were you saying, Adam?
I think that's the point I was trying to make is I agree that for me romance should be included but not the main spotlight of a book.
Mhm.
But you know, if you take a look at sheer numbers alone, you're going to see, 50 Shades of Grey in the top by far.
There's a lot of
Yeah,
Stuff
thirsty
like that.
readers out there.
yeah.
That is something though I'd like to at least chip in about this book is that's that was my first romance book, and like I'm not I don't hate the romance genre by any means. It was enjoyable, but I can totally see where you're getting at. Like it was weak in a lot of places. There was a lot of like weakness, and I think what bumped it into the middle for me was like just the fact that it was novel, right? That
Oh,
that that newness of a genre I've never experienced kept it out of my bottom three list. But yeah, if I was honest with myself, it was a weak book.
yeah, and I
Yeah.
think for me it for me and it sounds like for all of us because we weren't the target demographic, we weren't going to enjoy other parts the way that like somebody who goes into it specifically looking for a romance would.
Right.
Um, and honestly, for me, what bumped it out of the bottom was there is good writing. I do know the inspiration for like the magic system and stuff, so I kind of have a cheat code where I have seen the magic system flushed out a bit more.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I didn't necessarily need to have it done in the book. And because I know where what inspired it, I have like I can fill in some gaps that maybe other people can't, but the actual writing was done well
Yeah.
for what it was.
Yeah.
And that's what kept it real that's what really kept it out of my bottom three.
Yeah.
So like for what it was, I thought the writing was good. It was a very prototypical romance and a paint by numbers romance is going to have some missing elements that I think all of us enjoy in our stories.
Yeah.
I will say though, aside from the miscommunication bits, most of the like dialogue and the action sequences. That was the other thing is
Oh,
the
they were
action
great.
sequences in that were very well written. So that's another thing that bumped it out. And there was nothing that felt unresolved at the end, like Children of Blood and Bone for me.
Yeah.
So that bumped it out.
Yeah. I mean, the writer did a great job with action sequences and stuff like that. So Oh,
All right.
I respect the shit out of it, Adam. Uh, I'm bummed that uh, I don't know. I'm not actually bummed. I respect it.
No, I think we all had like pretty good reasons. Nothing felt like out of place. There was no consensus. This is the worst book, but
Yeah. I think
um,
I think we had some great book selections this year though.
oh,
Like I
absolutely.
how did you guys feel like I when I was putting this list together, like I had some highlights, but it was tough to refine the list.
Oh, it was. Like if it weren't for like honestly, the top and bottom were tough for me. If it weren't for the like two that I consider like some of my favorites of all time being on that list, most of the rest of it was very, very strong. Like my number three was tough to pick.
Hmm.
Like we'll get to honorable mentions in a little bit, but like if I really wanted to, I could make a strong case for honorable mentions for like five or six on this
Oh,
list.
oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Like I'm gonna try and whittle it down to a couple, but
I only have one. So if you guys can
I've
narrow it down to like one.
I
I've
I
only got
have
I've
I
only got
have
one.
a kind of like tie for my honorable mentions, but I do want to do a quick shout out after the honorable
Sure.
mentions.
All right, an
So
honorable mention. With that, Adam, take it away. What was
Yeah,
your
for me,
honorable mention?
I wanted to bring up the Odyssey again. I know you already talked about it, Alan, but um, for me, what kept the Odyssey out of my worst category was that it was the first. It was one of the first stories to ever be told, and it was told everywhere. And uh, I I personally bumped it out of my worst list because of the fact that it's a glimpse into the past to see what society liked thousands of years ago, you know. And that's a very unique perspective uh, that the hero's journey was alive just as much back then as it is now. And I enjoyed the glimpse in the past in a way that I don't normally enjoy historical stories and stuff. Um, so it deserved an honorable mention in my mind instead of being in my worst list. Although it was a tough contender because uh, I didn't particularly enjoy the writing style, but
So
I,
you have an honorable mention that keeps it out of the bottom. But
yeah,
like that's a fair assessment. It's actually one of the things that I love about the Odyssey is that it's a glimpse into the history of storytelling. And my bias towards loving mythology, so you know I've also read it like five or six different times. So it's a lot more enjoyable read when you've dissected it and you can go back and just enjoy it. You know.
yeah.
oh,
Figure we're getting
Who's
towards the end,
next?
so 90 makes sense. Um,
why don't we do Alex?
uh, so my honorable mention tie is going to be sufficiently advanced magic and Words of Radiance. Those two were like you guys have really hit all the points, but like those two were so close behind Off to Be the Wizard for me. Like we're talking like biting at the heels of it. I think that literally the separation is what I mentioned before, where after those other books, there was so much jam packed into them that I needed a breather before taking on more because there is a
Significantly longer.
lot to like process in them. But they do flush out things a lot better. Their magic system needs more explaining, but that explanation is done superbly well. Amazing world building. Off to Be the Wizard benefits a bit from like not having to build too much of the world, and part of the world building that's done is literally building the world. And which I thought was another decent separation, is that it didn't cast it to the side. It just made it a part of the plot, which I thought was kind of unique too. Whereas the others build the world in a much more traditional fantasy way, but Andrew Rowe and Brandon Sanderson are masters at doing those things, and they did it so well. And yeah, honestly, if they had been a little easier to digest, I think they probably would have tied for third, but instead they come in just behind. I appreciated them a lot, and I won't go too much into it because you guys covered most of the really good bits, but that was like my defining factor there. But they were just so close, and like I said, I can make the case for 5 other books being nearby.
Well, I think you've got a great point too. Like, looking at the page count, right? So the page count of Off to Be the Wizard is like 375, somewhere around there. And then you go to Sufficiently Advanced Magic, and you're in like the 620, 650 range.
It's not even like the page count necessarily. Yeah. It's the density of what's in those pages.
Well, that's what I mean. And then you go to Words of Radiance, and you're looking at like 1,300 pages, and so like the amount of pages the author needs to expand upon that world and that story is I think directly related to the users or the readers like need for decompression at the end, right? Because like if you read 4 of the Off to Be the Wizard series books,
and you end up with 1 Words of Radiance.
Exactly. And then
I'm getting 4 stories for the price of 1, and I think that was part of it. Is like there are times where what I want that dense. I want to immerse myself in a world so fully that I can forget that I live on this one, which is great. But I need to decompress coming back into it. Off to Be the Wizard was a lot easier to move in and out of it and not have to worry about that, but still have a compelling story and stuff.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, Alan. Let's hear your honorable mentions.
Mine is The Midnight Library. So this one made it on my list, but as a honorable mention because it showed me a genre or a subgenre that I didn't realize I would enjoy. This book was written in the style of what's that Will Ferrell movie? I said it earlier.
Stranger Than Fiction.
Yeah, Stranger Than Fiction. Like it felt very much like that kind of story. It wasn't quite meandering, but it was kind of, it was a casual story. Well, casual as if surviving attempted suicide is, casual. But what I mean is like this story felt it felt like it went in and out of social situations that like I didn't expect to enjoy. It was my first step into things like the good pseudo meandering, I guess, the step below American Gods. And yeah, I super enjoyed it. I didn't realize that I would be into like dramatic books, and I felt like that was a fairly dramatic book. So, yeah.
Definitely makes you think and can consider what would your library be like? What would your experiences be like?
Yeah. And it was a great magic system. But I mean, like we've said so far in the show, like it was a tough year. Like there was some strong contenders, and everybody was really fighting for our hearts, I think. So
yeah, Midnight Library would have been another one that would have shown up on my like contenders for like an honorable mention, but it because I do like thought-provoking books, ones that pose the um, what if scenarios and like really forces you to think about like what would this be like if I were in the main character's perspective, and it's more about that than it is about the story itself. It's a good thought experiment. It's a good like beginning to a thought experiment or a guide to a very good thought experiment.
Yeah.
It dropped out of mine, I think, because I've done that before without the help of this book and with the help of similar types of books. So it wasn't my first foray into it like it was for you.
Mm-hmm.
But I do remember the ones that were my first of that sort of genre, and it is something that sticks with you.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to be said for those sorts of books, even if they aren't your first two. Like, it's still good to revisit those things. And
it was a great concept too.
Mhm.
You know, it was a very respectable book. I think the author did a great job writing it. Um, but I mean, I've got personal biases. I am a consumer of books. I am a targeted demographic, and it didn't necessarily resonate to me, but it also showed me that this subgenre could resonate with me. So yeah.
Cool.
All right. I did mention that I wanted to do a quick shout out.
Yeah.
This shout out is to those that shouted us out, the books whose authors decided to participate in some capacity when we read their books. That's shout out to uh, Dead Silence, written by.
Oh yeah.
Uh,
Dead Silence.
I got
S.A.
the by S.A.
Barnes.
Dead Silence. I'm sorry, I was looking for the actual book. Dead Silence by S.A. Barnes. Thank you so much for the shout out and for being engaged with the process. In any capacity, that was like one of the coolest things that we've had happen. Like in both years of the show is actually getting some like author participation, like even if it was just by Twitter. Hopefully, we'd love to do more of that and get some more direct engagement. And on that same note, shout out to Sophia Hahn, the writer of Always Have, Always Will. I She was definitely more directly involved, actually participated in the chat, which is even like more cool to me.
So cool.
Like to like actually be able to talk with the author. We actually may have some more interactions with her coming up in the future, and as we start to produce some more varied content. So hopefully look forward to that. But seriously, big shout out to both authors that engaged with the process. And for our first book in a long time that we had recommended by somebody who engaged with us on YouTube.
Yeah.
So Choice of Magic. Shout out to, do you have the username for us, Alan?
I believe, Brandon P. Brandon P. from YouTube. Thank you so much. Honestly, like
that is,
I have enjoyed Choice of Magic, and that was a really cool. I don't think this was on Adam's radar, and Adam's
no, not at all.
Michael G. Manning fan, right?
Yeah.
So that's really awesome, and to have people actually engaging with our content, that's amazing. Like it's our first sign of like any sort of like real momentum that isn't from us like directly petitioning the people in our lives are those ones. So I just wanted to shout out everybody who has been engaging above and beyond, and as always, a shout out and a Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays to all of our patrons.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much for keeping Alan's computer on.
Well, I mean, it's more than that. Through Patreon, what you guys support is you directly support our website. You directly support, supporting the DM's table's presence on the internet, and we super appreciate it. Honestly, like it's campy, and I know Like everybody says it, but honestly, like without you guys, it'd be really hard for us to continue. It'd be really hard to host. Um, I knocked action figures down. It'd be really hard to host, our podcast and stuff. All that stuff costs money, and so thank you so much for our patrons. We are very thankful.
Anybody you'd like to
Yes,
shout
thank you
out
so
while you're
much.
over there, Adam?
Thank you, authors, for writing good books.
Yeah, cheers.
Yeah. Cheers, everybody.
Keep 'em coming.
And
Mhm.
I do have one final shout out. Thank you to both of you for
Aw.
Adam and Alan for keeping things going when I messed up my schedule got messed up with everything for just it's
It
been
was
a blast with year number 2 in the books. It's been a blast with both of you guys.
Yeah.
Cheers, and I love you both,
Cheers.
Thanks
guys.
for keeping the
Clink.
convo alive.
Yeah. That's something I've
All right.
really enjoyed about the series is I don't feel like I'm getting burned out with the series because I enjoy talking with you guys about the books we read, and I enjoy talking with Twitch with our people in chat, and I love getting the different perspectives. I really didn't think I was going to be a big like book club guy, but I'm telling you, I enjoy the book club setting, and yeah. So thank you guys. I think I've read. I said that this last year too. I'm pretty sure. But I think this year is again the most books I've read this year. Do you guys got your book count handy? What's your body count for books this year? Do you know?
I don't have an exact number. It was less than last year though. Last year was my all-time high.
Ooh.
Um,
Mine this year is 32, and before the year is out, I'll probably be at 33 or 34.
I was at 30 this year. I was a little. I had 32 last year, and I'll have 31 by the end of this year. Last year I had more because, well, this year I spent a little more time on podcasts.
Oh, sure.
So
That's respectable.
there were a couple that I just deep dove into. Um, so like, but as far as reading goes, I think technically though this year's page count was higher.
Oh yeah, I think we
Like,
read 3 or 4 Brandon Sanderson books.
well, and then
Yep.
like I had another like 2 Brandon Sanderson books on top of the ones that we read, and yeah. So this year's page count I think was higher, probably by a significant margin from last year, but the book count is slightly less. Actually, hold on. Oh, there's a double on my list. Never mind. So I'm at 29. I will have 30 by the end of the year when we when I finish Choice of Magic. I'm about third of the way through right now. So
Yeah, I think the smaller series is what bumped me up. Was I devoured the Magic 2.0 series. I absolutely enjoyed the crap out of it. I didn't finish it, but a lot of it was like we talked about. Like by the 4th book, I was kind of burned out and I needed a break from it. I fully intend to come back, but it was time to read more books.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I was probably somewhere in the 30s too.
At least, I mean, you read every book we did this year, right?
which is like 24 at a base level.
Yeah.
I did all of Magic 2.0. I read all of those.
So that
I
puts
read
you at
all
31
of
just with that.
Sanders.
Like,
So
you're in the 30s with just with the one series on top of everything else.
it was definitely a good year, and I really enjoyed getting my all-time favorite in this year again. I think that was like my 5th time through or something like that.
All
Um,
right. Well, why don't we wrap it up here? Adam, you want to do the honors, or am I putting you on the spot?
I feel like I'm on this. I don't know what to say, man.
I
I
mean,
got
I can
plugs for earlier.
at least let the folks at home know. Just a quick reminder. Well, we'll be releasing this on Christmas, right?
This is getting released to patrons on Christmas, and will be released shortly after for the general public. So
Right.
the
So
general
we are.
public will be seeing this after Christmas.
Yeah. So we're recording this in like the first week of December, but by the time you guys out there actually see this, we will be we'll be reading the book for our Redemption series and voting on a yet to be determined set. We will likely be moving into a slightly different format. We're still working a little bit on exactly what that will be and what that will look like. We will keep you updated as we go.
I think
We want to move into a more varied content style, but we are not going to stop the 800s. We might slow it up a little bit so that we can fit other stuff in a little more easily, and so that we can, like, we still want to do this on a very regular basis, but we also don't want to overwhelm people and make them have to choose between like one type of content or the other. We want to give people the most reach that we can, and that it's going to mean shuffling things around a little bit. But like I said, we'll keep you posted on how that'll go.
Yeah. I think for next year we've got it locked in that we're doing one book a month.
All right.
We're not 100% sure yet when those books air. You'll have to check out dmstable.com slash the 800s for information on what book we're actively reading and what book we will be reading. All that information is out there on dmstable.com. So go check it out if you want to catch up, or who knows, you could be seeing this well into the future. So yeah, things change, and that's the best place to get updates as far as like what our current reading schedule is.
Especially since who knows how much longer Twitter will be around. Current events for us, anyway. But yeah, DM's Table and YouTube. I'll let why don't you, Adam, go ahead and do your plugs for the end and let them know exactly where they can find everything.
Yeah. I'm just going to take a quick stab at plugs today. DMstable.com for all things DM's Table and the 800s. There you can find links to everything I'm also going to mention, including our Etsy page, dmstable.com/Etsy, Patreon, patreon.com/DMstable, our Facebook and Twitter accounts, at the DM's Table on Facebook and at DM's Table on Twitter. Sorry, I was reading the thing that Alan was typing.
Do not become distracted.
Yeah. And just in general, if you guys want to reach out to us, feel free to hit us up on our socials and we'll have a chat with you. Check out our YouTube videos, leave comments, and we'll comment back at you.
And we got some book we got some book suggestions from there too. So
yeah,
it's another way to do it.
We got a lot of great book content out there, as well as our podcast and some D&D book reviews. And Alan really likes playing Crash Bandicoot, so a lot of videos options there. Yeah. He does a lot better than I would.
Aw, thanks.
I'm glad he's the one playing on the screen. So. But yeah, if there's anything else you guys want us to try out, feel free to give us a shout out on our socials or comment on one of our videos.
Yeah, absolutely, and let us know what you think about our format, and what you think about the show. Let us know what you'd like to see in 2023 or in the future. Your comments help us refine the show and make it accessible to you and other people. So let us know.
Yep.
And I think from all of us here at the 800s, we want to say happy holidays, whatever you celebrate. We're happy you decided to celebrate with us.
Heck yeah.
Happy Christmas, Kwanzaa.
Yeah. And thank you for joining us and being super awesome commentators and giving us super awesome books to read. So
Absolutely.
Thank you all.
with that, I think we'll see you next year.
Yeah. See you next year and next book.
Bye.